Hey guys, welcome into the show. It's a new season. 2018 is here. I couldn't think of a better time to do this show than to set it up on the day before the college fantasy football season started. I mean, last week we got an appetizer. We've got about 5 games. I thought the best one was Colorado State, Hawaii. But here we are when we wake up in the morning, when we wake up Thursday morning, we're going to have college football tomorrow. So you know what? There's not a better time to go ahead and have our first show of the season. And you know what? This show is going to be different than any other that I have ever done. It's not going to be, let's talk about the rankings, let's dig into the rankings, where's a guy ranked, and let's analyze that. I think you guys have all the tools right now. We've had an entire offseason, an entire preseason to put things together. We have rankings up on the site. We have projections up now on the site. I think what we're going to do now is we're just going to slow it down a little bit. We're going to take a game-by-game glimpse, the fantasy slant on every game this weekend. And I'm telling you guys, this might be a lengthy show, but it's going to be well worth it. We're going to touch on everything that I am looking at in every matchup this weekend to analyze what we're going to be putting out moving forward. So if you had a good draft and you need to enhance your team, this show's for you. If you feel like you had a bad draft and you need to give your team a facelift, this show's going to be for you. And I'm telling you right now, guys, you're going to want to take notes. You're going to want to add guys to the watch list. This is what I am going to be looking at and what I'm observing all weekend long. So when I send out my exclusive email on Sunday, on Monday, these are the bullet points that I'm going to be looking at, and it's quite a bit. I wish I could show you guys my notes. I've got everything laid out around me. Usually I'm straight in the camera type of guy. I'm going to be all over the place. So now that I've taken a couple of minutes for you guys to come on in, thanks again for coming in. I want to thank everyone that signed up for the Total Points, the CFF site Total Points Fantasy League. We've got almost 120 of you all in. I think there may be 2 or 3 more spots open. We're going to give away t-shirts, prizes of 2019 content to some of the 3 winners at the end of the season. And I really want to thank you guys for your patience over the last few weeks. We have redesigned the site. It's been a little bit of a hassle. Some of you guys emailing in, we've had to resend some passwords. We've had to resend some links. But I think it's worth it. The projections are up on the site, and now the CFF site has the weekly projections. A lot of emails coming in this week. I thought we put a good article on the website this week addressing the projections versus the rankings. So the emails have stopped since we've gone ahead and put that in. But thanks for all the feedback on the projections. The one thing that I'll say, and I think this is an important note to move on as we get into the coming weeks, especially for you guys now jumping in the DFS, back into the college football DFS. As we get 2 to 3 weeks into the season, I think you're going to see rankings and projections come a little closer together and not a lot of variance there, because at that particular point we're going to have some trends. We're going to have some game data to look at. You know, the one difference between college football and pro is that pro you've got 4 preseason games. We already know the systems. College football, there's a lot of turnover. There's a lot of attrition, coaching, systems. So it takes a little while to really, and this is what I'll say. Week 1 for us is definitely a pain in the butt, right? We had everything ready to rock and roll come Monday, and then depth charts get released and everything. It's like we had to have everything written in pencil and start all over again. So that's why it's taken a little while. That's why we're still catching up with the rankings and the projections, and we'll probably have updates going on all the way through tomorrow. So bear with us. Thanks for your patience, and most importantly, thanks for your support, guys. But I don't want to waste a lot of time. I'm going to put the start bench up. Usually I do them on these shows at the end of the show. I think the show is going to run long, so I'm going to put it up on the website at the end of this show. And also, I want to throw this out there as well. Hold your questions for the end of the show. I'm going to go and take over the Twitter account, the CFF site Twitter account. I'm going to answer any questions you might have on Twitter for a good 30, 45 minutes. I'll catch them all. If I miss them, I apologize, but I'm going to try to catch them all. But with that being said, guys, let's get right into the content for week 1. Games start tomorrow, and I am going to go write down the playlist of the times of the games. We're going to go in order, and I'm going to start right at the top with that Central Florida UConn game. What are we looking for? Well, we know that Josh Heupel's taken over at UCF, right? I think the offense is going to be in good hands. I myself think that Dredrick Snelson and Gabriel Davis have been undervalued receivers going into this year. We know what Heupel's offense did at Missouri, and I have to tell you, if those guys are sitting out there on your waiver wire, your free agent wire, you need to at least add them to your watch list, or at least add them onto one of those guys onto your roster. There's going to be points going up at UCF again, and I'm telling you, those two guys are going to be Mackenzie Milton's main weapons. But what am I looking at from a UConn standpoint as well? Well, when the depth chart came out, Xavier Scott topped the running back chart. We thought it was going to be Kevin Mensah. It was Xavier Scott. So look, guys, I'm going to throw a lot of names out there. This is what I'm watching in every single matchup this week. So the UCF offense, I think we're in good hands. You've got Adrian Killen still at running back. Otis Anderson is going to be all over the place. He's going to be a utility guy. As a matter of fact, he was listed as utility on the depth chart. I think you're going to see a lot of running from him. You're going to see a lot of receiving from him. There's a lot of guys like that this year that I like, and I'm going to touch on them a little bit later. Guys like Otis Anderson, guys like Isaiah Harper at Old Dominion, guys like Isaiah Wright at Temple, guys like Tony Pollard at Memphis, guys that can do it all, and we're going to touch on all of those guys as we go. But I don't want to continue to spend the time on the first matchup. I want to go right down the list because there's a lot to get through. We're looking at New Mexico State at Minnesota. What are we looking at? Well, we need Huntley to turn around, the running back from New Mexico State last weekend, bad game at Wyoming. Wyoming's defense is good. I think Huntley will be better as the season moves along. This is not a game that I think you want him in either, but I think Huntley is going to be a play down the line. From the Minnesota side, what am I looking at? Rodney Smith, right? Rodney Smith, the running back. He needs to find the end zone more this year. I think he will do that. I think you've got the 1,000-yard season. I think you've got double-digit touchdowns if you got Rodney Smith. I think you're in a good spot, and he's definitely a start this week. Next game, Central Connecticut, Ball State. What am I looking for in that game? Well, you know what? James Gilbert's back. James Gilbert listed at the top of the depth chart. We also know they have Huntley and Dunner right there at the running backs. I'm curious to see how much run James Gilbert gets, how many carries he actually gets. I don't know if he'll get that many in the Central Connecticut game, but if he gets 65 to 70% of the carries every game, we undervalued him in the preseason, but we'll see where it goes from that. Add James Gilbert onto your watch list if he's not already drafted. Kennesaw State versus Georgia State, guys, I hate to even mention these games. One thing that I'm looking for is just where's Penny Hart? What are we going to get from Penny Hart this year? I don't know if there's a better matchup for him as far as what we're going to get out of the Georgia State offense. I'm looking to see what Penny Hart's going to do this year in 2018. Southeastern Louisiana at UL Monroe. Very high on the Caleb Evans quarterback UL Monroe this year. I think what you also, if you're high on Caleb Evans, you have to be high on Marcus Green, the receiver. I think you even look at Derek Gore, the running back. And a name that I'll throw at you in the deep FBS leagues, keep an eye on Zachary Jackson. Keep an eye on Zachary Jackson for UL Monroe as a second receiver behind Marcus Green in that offense. Now, let's get to a Power 5 matchup. Big matchup this weekend. Maybe one of the better games to watch will be Northwestern at Purdue. This is what's interesting. Clayton Thorson's questionable. We don't know when he's actually going to play. I'm looking for Jeremy Larkin, right? We're looking to see what he's going to do. We're looking to see can he carry the ball 25 times this year? That's what I'll be looking at on the Northwestern side. On the Purdue side, a lot of questions. We don't know who's going to start at quarterback yet. We've got Jackson Anthrop, who is definitely a solid receiver, but, we're throwing in guys like Jared Sparks, who had a solid preseason, has been dinged up. You've got the youngster Rondell Moore there. You've got guys like DJ Knox, who tapped the running back depth chart over Markel Jones. How do those guys fit in? So there's a lot of question marks in that Purdue offense. I'm hoping that we're coming away with answers with Purdue after this weekend, after they play a quality opponent. So that'll definitely be one of the games that I'm monitoring the most going into the weekend. We go to Wake Forest at Tulane. Wake Forest, interesting team this year. We got Greg Dortch back. We've got Sam Hartman quarterback. And I think Colburn is an undervalued running back going into this year. I think he's going to get a lot of work this year. And if he's out there, I had someone email me today, available. I think Colburn is worth a grab. He's worth rostering right now. I think he's going to get a lot of work in that Wake Forest offense. And over at Tulane, I think what we're looking at over there is, where does Darius Bradwell fit in? We projected him to be the #1 running back at Tulane. It looks like he's co-#1 with Hutterson. That situation, it still has to play out. We brought Bradwell down in the rankings a little bit, but that is a running back combination to monitor, because that Tulane offense is definitely going to be run heavy. So 2 names to add to your watch list over there at Tulane. Savannah State, UAB, nothing new there. I think we're going to stick with A.J. Erdely, the quarterback, Spencer Brown, the running back, and Andre Wilson, the wide receivers. Those are your big 3. Playing it forward, UAB returns a lot of people, and I think those are going to be your big 3 off of that offense moving forward in 2018. Missouri State playing Oklahoma State, and here we go. A question at quarterback for Oklahoma State. Is Taylor Cornelius the answer? Here's my take on Taylor Cornelius. If we knew that if Taylor Cornelius had played already and was coming back, how high would he be in that Oklahoma State offense this year? I think he would be much higher than where he's at right now. But there's a lot of competition. It seems like Cornelius is going to start off as the quarterback 1. The matchup is really great. I don't know how he really takes a step back unless he has a terrible game. But this is what I'm more interested in. How much work is Justice Hill going to get this year? I don't think he'll get a lot this week. I think Oklahoma State blows out. Obviously, they're going to blow out Missouri State. But I'm really curious to see what goes on with the wide receiver situation, right? We know that receivers moved on. We've got Tyron Johnson. We've got Dylan Stoner, J.J. McCluskey. I'm interested to see the production and the pecking order of who's 1, who's 2. And I think you're looking at 1, 2, Johnson, Stoner. I don't know if it's particularly in that order, but that's something that we need to monitor this week as well. Weber State play in Utah. I don't think there's a lot of questions at Utah other than the wide receiver position. We know that the quarterback's Huntley. We know that Zach Moss. I think Zach Moss is in for a monster year this year, guys. This is a year to definitely have Zach Moss. And I think from the wide receiver side, we had predicted Mariner to be the wide receiver 1. I still think that's going to be up for grabs. You've got Mariner, you've got Covey, you've got Simpkins, you've got Nakoa. If I had to guess, Mariner's the guy right now to add on your watch list. He's the guy that I would take if I was drafting. So there's a situation to monitor as well with the Utah wide receiver situation. Northwestern State opening up at Texas A&M. Once again, we got Kellen Mond starting at quarterback. You've got Travion Williams at running back, rock solid right there. You've got Osborne, the wide receiver. The question is, how much run does Buckley get? Courtney Davis at wide receiver. Let's monitor that wide receiver 2 situation over there. And I actually think Travion Williams is going to get a lot of run this year, because I don't know if they have a legitimate running back 2 right now, unless, we're going to see how that plays out. UC Davis wrapping up the Thursday games. UC Davis at San Jose State, and it seems like I say this every year, San Jose State is just one of those teams where we just wait and watch week 1. I don't necessarily think that there's a guy out there that anyone needs to roster. We're going to wait and watch San Jose State late on a Thursday night, and chances are this is what's going to happen. Somebody's going to go off. Somebody's going to put in for San Jose State, and I just tell you to hold. Let somebody else waste a roster move right now, because I don't know if that's going to be worth a move, considering that you're monitoring or using them as a barometer against UC Davis. So let's get right into the Friday games, guys, and we're going to open up with Syracuse at Western Michigan. I actually think this is a very intriguing matchup. Obviously, we know that Dungy is a start. On the Western Michigan side, we got Jamari Bogan back. We've got Levante Bellamy. Bellamy's another one of those guys, that situational guys, multi-purpose guys. I think he's going to be used all over the field this year as a runner and receiver. I think he's definitely worth monitoring. And over at Syracuse, one thing that I'll mention this week in regards to the rankings is we went ahead and took out Nykeem Johnson for Sean Riley. Why did we do that? Well, Johnson wasn't even on the depth chart. It seems like he's dinged up a little bit. I have no hesitation in predicting that Devin Butler is going to be the top outside receiver for Syracuse. But this is why I like Sean Riley this week. He's an inside receiver. He's been practicing at inside receiver, and he's been productive throughout practice as well. And one thing that I try to look at a few other things, a few other clues that let me know who's the guy to grab. Not only is he the inside receiver, guys, but he's also on the kick return team and the second punt returner on the depth chart. which means that the coaches have a lot of confidence in him to put him on the kick team, and which means they love his creativity in space. If he's an inside receiver and they feel like that with the ball in his hands, then you can imagine him in the slot. Remember what Irvin Phillips did for Syracuse last year. If Riley gets that type of action this year, especially in week 1, he's going to be worth a play. There's no doubt about that. So keep an eye on Sean Riley moving forward. Over at Eastern Michigan playing Monmouth, I don't know if there's much to monitor there. You've got Tyler Weigers, the Iowa transfer quarterback in Eastern Michigan, but I am interested to see the running back combination of Erickson and Shaq Van, see how those carries play out. Is it going to be more of a split? Shaq Van never did really fulfill the promise or the expectations that we had for him a season ago. Does he make up for that now? Let's monitor that Eastern Michigan running back situation. Michigan State hosting Utah State. I think for Utah State, I think you're looking at either Gerald Bright or Darwin Thompson at running back. That's a situation you're going to want to monitor moving forward as Utah State gets into league play. And over at Michigan State, one guy that I have my eye on, I think we know what we're going to get with Michigan State, but I'm really interested to watch Connor Hayward this year. Obviously LJ Scott's the guy. We got Brian Lewerke at quarterback, but I'm really interested to see Connor Hayward. That'll be a player that I'm monitoring moving forward. Army at Duke. Okay, Army at Duke. I'm real interested in Britton Brown this year. I think he has potential to carry a heavier load. He's the lead back now, and I'm curious to see what he does in combination with Daniel Jones, the quarterback. I think those two guys could be a really good combination for that Duke offense that could be better than they were a season ago. We're going to go to Western Kentucky playing at Wisconsin. Nothing really new at Wisconsin. We know the situation with receivers right now. Obviously, I think the thing of note for me is that Tywan Deal's listed as the number 2 running back behind Jonathan Taylor, but there's also 3 guys underneath him, so we don't know who's going to get the run at number 2 running back. And over at Western Kentucky, with the wide receivers, you've got Jernigan, you've got Lucky Jackson back. Running back by committee. That Western Kentucky offense, I don't know if we're going to get any answers this weekend playing at Wisconsin. That's going to be an offense we're going to have to monitor moving forward. And, we monitored the running back situation at Western Kentucky all year last year, and no one really had a breakthrough. Maybe that happens again. Maybe it won't. We'll see. Definitely a position we'll be monitoring throughout the first couple of weeks. San Diego State playing at Stanford. I think what comes out of this game is obviously you've got Juwan Washington. You got Juwan Washington going against Bryce Love. Chase Jasmine is confirmed as the second running back for San Diego State. And here's something interesting too for this matchup. I read this as well. Juwan Washington is actually going to be back on kick returns. They're actually thinking about putting him back on punt returns. I think if you have any questions on whether or not to start or sit Juwan Washington, given your depth, the one thing that you don't have to worry about is his touches. He's going to get a number of touches. The question is whether he's going to be productive enough with those touches. And this is what I've been telling everyone on the emails this week, there's a lot of juicy matchups on the FBS slate this week. If you have better matchups elsewhere, go ahead and play it. If not, put Washington in there. He's going to get 25 to 30 carries or 25 to 30 touches this game. So don't hesitate if you feel like your back's up against the wall with Juwan Washington. Portland State playing at Nevada. I think Nevada, you know what you're going to get. Ty Ganji, Kelton Moore, Mannix, O'Leary, Orange. Those obviously are the big 4. What's an interesting play is that if you can get Trevion Armstrong as a tight end in your league, all of a sudden now he becomes a really good option. He's listed as a wide receiver, I believe, on Fantrax, but if you can get him as a tight end, that would be a guy worth taking a stab on as well that may not have gotten drafted in your league. And then Colorado State, definitely some things to look out for here. Wide receiver, we were big on Laviska Shenault in the preseason, in fall camp. There were a lot of news coming out on the excitement and buzz around this guy. He wasn't even listed at the top of the depth chart at any of the positions, but I think he's going to get some playing time to go with McIntyre, to go with Winfrey, to go with Nixon. And it looks like Trayvon McMillan is going to be the running back there, the transfer from Virginia Tech. So I think you're going to be okay starting him. Over on the Colorado State side, we had a chance to watch them play last week. It looks like they're going to score points. We were on Preston Williams early in the preseason. We did get some news when Preston Williams was going through a little bit and banged up that Warren Jackson was making some noise out of camp. But no, it is definitely Preston Williams. Warren Jackson is the starting flanker, but I think the two guys to have in that offense from a wide receiver spot is going to be definitely Preston Williams and Olabisi Johnson. And we have not seen Rashad Body yet, and we're going to see Rashad Body. I don't think Izzy Matthews is going to continue to get that many carries that many carries more than a team. I think Body is going to actually end up getting some carries. And I don't know where he's at for week 1. I don't know if he's banged up, but I think he'll be a factor before it's all said and done. So we're moving on, guys. We're going to go to Oregon State at Ohio State. And what are we looking for here? How involved is Artavis Pierce in the offense, running and receiving? I think we'll be watching that. And over at Ohio State, the Dobbins-Weber, the combination there. Are we gonna, is Dobbins going to get most of the carries? Or are we going to see maybe something similar to last year where Dobbins got a lot of carries till they got maybe in the red zone and then Weber took over? That'll be a situation that we definitely need to monitor from a fantasy projection and ranking standpoint moving forward, because we need to see the upside of what both guys will be moving forward. Florida Atlantic at Oklahoma. Obviously, if you've got Devin Singletary, he's going to get his touches on FAU. I'm also looking at Javon Durante, who came over a West Virginia transfer, who's now eligible this year. And without a doubt, all eyes will be on Kyler Murray. We had him high on the list. People emailing us, hey, listen, they haven't announced the depth chart yet. He hasn't been announced officially as the starter. Kyler Murray is the guy. All eyes will be there. We have a lot of chips in on Kyler Murray. And then also looking elsewhere as well, I think there's been a lot of debate. CeeDee Lamb, Marquise Brown. I think both guys are going to be good. I think you're going to be looking at a similar situation in this offense as we do at some other teams like maybe a Syracuse in the past or a West Virginia this year. I don't see where both of those guys won't be maybe top 20, top 25 on a week-to-week basis. That Oklahoma offense is not going to slow down. They're going to put up points, guys. So between the passing game and Rodney Anderson and the running game with Trey Sermon as well to complement him, no shortage of weapons in the Oklahoma offense. Go over to Southern and TCU. The only thing I'm really looking for here is just Sean Robinson, precision, his accuracy, see how he looks operating, the offense. I think Sean Robinson could have a really big year. I'll be watching Jalen Reagor, the wide receiver, and obviously keeping tabs on Kevontae Turpin. I mean, I don't know if there's been a more overhyped guy in the fantasy circles that for a TCU receiver than Kevontae Turpin. It seems like he goes high every year in drafts just because he's a jitterbug and can kind of take it to the house, and then all of a sudden 2 weeks into the season, he ends up and you'll go through the waiver wire, and there he is, Kevontae Turpin on the waiver wire. He runs back a punt and somebody picks him up again. I don't know if there's a more overrated fantasy prospect than Kevontae Turpin. Maybe he'll prove me wrong this year, but that's my take on Kevontae Turpin. Let's move on to Texas versus Maryland, another good week 1 matchup. Obviously, Sam Ehlinger is the quarterback. The things that we're watching for over here at Texas. What's the running back situation? Is it Young? Is it Watson, the Cal transfer? Is it the freshman? Is it Ingram? We don't know. We're going to see how that plays out. And over at Maryland, is it Kasim Hill? He's the co-starter. I think Hill's going to end up being the starter over there. You still got Johnson and Harrison at running back. I personally have liked McFarland. I thought this was going to be a breakout year for McFarland. He's listed behind both of those other guys on the depth chart. I'm not ruling him out yet. Maybe he takes time to get going. I just feel that kid's got too much talent. Somehow, some way, he's going to be worked into the offense, but I don't think it's going to be early. And if you have McFarland, if you drafted him, you may want to look elsewhere or put somebody else on your watch list. But he's definitely worth monitoring in the next couple of weeks. Going over to Kent State versus Illinois, nothing flashy here, no pun intended. But, Kent State, new staff, new system. I think we're looking for Justin Rankin. He's the guy that I'm looking in there. He can catch, he can run. The question is whether or not that Kent State offense is going to score enough points. And when you look at Illinois, you've got A.J. Bush, the transfer who won the quarterback job over there. Interested to watch Mike Epstein. I think maybe Mike Epstein went under the radar in a lot of drafts. Okay, let's see how Mike Epstein does. Year was cut short last year due to injury. Comes back this year. Maybe that offense is a little better. Maybe Mike Epstein is available in your league, a person to put on your watch list moving forward. Texas State at Rutgers, guys. Texas State at Rutgers. Blackshear announced as the starting running back. Hillman as the Boston College transfer. as the running back 2. Now, here's where some situations need to be weighed out when you're looking at depth chart issues, right? You've got Blackshear listed as the starter, Hilliman listed as number 2. I don't know if they're going to split time. I don't know if they're going to be situational guys. Here's the one thing that I do know. Blackshear is 5'9", about 190 pounds. Hilliman 6 foot, 225. I can see one guy getting the work in between the 20s and Hilliman come in and taking over in the red zone, goal line, short yardage situations. Those are the things we're going to want to monitor moving forward that I'll be watching this weekend in that matchup. Coastal Carolina at South Carolina. The one thing that I'm going to mention about this matchup, I really like Jake Bentley this year. I think he's under the radar. He's got Deebo Samuel. He's got Brian Edwards. He's got Shee Smith. I think he's got a number of good receivers on an improved team with a good offense. And I really think that Jake Bentley in a Power 5 league, especially conference-specific league, could be an under-the-radar play this year for South Carolina. Definitely worth monitoring. Here we go. Biggie in the fantasy world, Ole Miss playing Texas Tech. We know what we're getting with Jordan Ta'amu. We know what we're getting with wide receiver A.J. Brown. Scotty Phillips named the starting running back at Ole Miss. So I think if you have him, this could be the matchup that you throw him in there if you're hurting for some depth at running back. And then over on the Texas Tech side, you've got T.J. Vasher at receiver. And I know everyone's waiting to hear my take at the quarterback spot. And here's what we haven't gotten any clarity, right? But here's everything that I have heard of most of the quarterback situations that are up in the air because of depth chart uncertainty. This might be the one time. This might be the one team where I feel comfortable saying, I think you're going to be okay. Starting McLean Carter, I think he's going to be the guy. I think he's going to be the starter, and I think he's going to do well. I just never had enough or heard enough or read enough positive reviews about Jet Duffy to make me think that he's even going to get into the game. I could be wrong, but if you have to roll the dice, I think McLean Carter is definitely the guy to do it. James Madison at North Carolina State, and like Jake Bentley at South Carolina, I think Ryan Finley is an under-the-radar play at quarterback this year as well, also in Power 5 leagues. You've got his targets are Harmon. I mean, yeah, look, don't get me wrong, Jalen Samuels is gone, right? But he's got Kelvin Harmon, he's got Myers, he's got Louis, he's got 3 really big targets. I think for me, the question is, what goes on with NC State at running back? Is it Gillespie? Is the freshman coming in, Person, going to take over? Is Person eventually going to take over? We liked Gillespie in the spring, but now I'm starting to think Person's going to work his way in a lot sooner than later. That's a situation that we're going to have to monitor, that I'll watch in the opening weekend. Villanova playing at Temple. The only guy that I'm really watching right now for me, Raquel Armstead, I'd like to see how he does, but I'm really watching Isaiah Wright. I mentioned Isaiah Wright at the top as one of those guys that, the utility guys. I think Isaiah Wright could have some fantasy potential this year in deep FBS leagues. Let's monitor him this weekend if he's available in your league. Let's go to Houston. At Rice last week barely won against Prairie View A&M. You're talking to somebody that drafted Emmanuel Isupka, right? I drafted him. After watching last week's games, you have to feel good. I know the offense that they're going to run is very Stanford-esque. I just don't know how well Rice is going to do. I'm really scared to play him against Houston this week. And over at Houston, we know what's going on over there, right? Got the Eric King. What's going on with the situation with running back? Is it going to be Terrence Williams? Is it going to be Mulba Carr? That's one that we have to monitor. And also, I'm expecting Courtney Lark to be the #1 receiver. Let's see if Courtney Lark ends up being the #1 receiver at Houston. That's what we projected. That would be a really nice score if we went ahead and hit with that. Going over to Furman at Clemson, I don't think there's really a lot to look at in this matchup other than the fact that we know that Kelly Bryant's starting. Trevor Lawrence, there's no way he doesn't play in this game. If Trevor Lawrence has to play, if he doesn't play in this game, then something's wrong. But the guy that I'm really excited to watch, I don't think we're going to get a chance to watch a lot of him this week, but Travis Etienne. Really high on Travis Etienne this year, and if you've got him, I'm expecting a big year out of that guy. Alcorn State playing at Georgia Tech. I think the quarterback Tyquan Marshall is going to be, I think he's going to be a gold mine for fantasy points this year. I really like him this year. Kervonte Benson, I can't tell you how concerned I am to have him. With all of his suspensions, he's now suspended for the first quarter of this game. I don't think the starters are going to play more than 3 quarters anyway, so I don't know if you're going to get more than 2 quarters out of him. So if you've got Kervonte Benson, I think you're putting him on the bench this week just out of precaution. You've got UMass playing at Boston College this week, and forget what UMass did last week, guys. I mean, look who they did, maybe against Duquesne. They're playing at Boston College this weekend. The defense is going to be vastly different. However, I do think Andy Isabella could be worth the start in PPR formats. I don't know if Massachusetts is going to, if they're going to score a lot of points, but I do think if your back's up against the wall, Isabella is not a bad play, and I can't tell you how much I love A.J. Dillon. A.J. Dillon at the top of my rankings this week, and I'm telling you guys, he's about as secure as they're going to get. They're going to feed him the ball. If Boston College scores, most likely it's A.J. Dillon. But I can go here talking all night about A.J. Dillon. Let's get on to some other games now. Stony Brook at Air Force. I just think one person we're watching right now is Arian Worthman. Arian Worthman kind of tailed off at the end of last year. Let's see where he picks up moving forward, or there could be a short hook on Arian Worthman this year, but I've got my fingers crossed for him. Howard at Ohio, nothing really to watch there. We just need Nathan Rourke to stay healthy and advance into the next few weeks. Dual threat ability, one of the better fantasy quarterbacks in the FBS. And then we go to Austin Peay at Georgia. We know that there are a lot of carries to be had at Georgia. We know that White going down, definitely, he was probably going to play this year, but you're looking at probably a 1-2 punch now, I guess, of Swift and Holyfield. That would be my guess. I think for me, what's interesting, obviously Fromm hasn't been announced as starter. I can't see him not starting unless something's wrong with that hand that he had hurt. I'm more curious to see how they incorporate Demetrius Robertson into this offense. It looks like Terry Godwin is questionable. Maybe he won't play. Let's see how Demetrius Robertson works his way into the lineup here, how they utilize him. My guess is he's going to play right away, and my guess is he was probably drafted in a number of leagues already that you guys play. Washington playing at Auburn. I don't know if we're monitoring much on the Washington side other than finding a target. Is it Ty Jones? Is that going to be their top wide receiver this week? Worth monitoring. Also, this is what I think is the biggest monitoring effort in this game. Auburn running back. We know that Cam Martin sits 1. We know that Jatarvius Whitlow sits 2. Asa Martin sits 3. But Malzahn has already said that it was going to be 2 to 3, maybe 4 weeks before we really learn the pecking order of the running backs in the Auburn offense. We know how they're going to start, but that doesn't necessarily mean how they're going to finish. I have held on to all of my shares on Jatarvius Whitlow. I still have faith that he's going to come through and be the #1 guy. I don't know that for sure, but that's what I believe. I'm not selling my Jatarvius Whitlow stock. I'm holding on to that. That's going to be my guy midway through the year. We'll see if that pans out. We're going to go with Tennessee playing West Virginia. We know what we're getting with the West Virginia offense. The one new name that I will throw out is TJ Simmons, the Alabama transfer. I think you're going to be looking at Sills. I think you're going to be looking at Jennings. And I think you're going to be looking at Simmons over Sims for that third best wide receiver spot in that West Virginia offense. And there are plenty of balls to be flung around in that offense. I think you'll be okay if you have Simmons in a deep FBS league. And then what's going on with running back over at Tennessee? We don't know. Is it Jordan? Is it Chandler? Is it going to be the Michigan State transfer, Madre London? We don't know. That's a situation worth monitoring this week, and we'll be watching that. Albany playing at Pitt. I don't know if there's a lot to watch in this game other than the fact that we thought Darren Hall was going to be the workhorse. It looks like he's going to be the co-starter with Quadri Allison. It'll be curious to see how those carries get divided. That's a situation that we're going to be monitoring because I know a lot of guys drafted Darren Hall high the earlier their drafts were. As this information came out, we've getting a lot of uh-ohs. But let's see. Let's not panic. I think sometimes we overreact to week 1 depth chart news. Let's see where it stands after this weekend. You have to take these 1 or 2 weeks at a time. One of the more under the radar games this weekend for me that I think will be really entertaining. It's a group of 5 game. Marshall traveling to Miami of Ohio. I really can't wait to see this game. I'm really, with Miami of Ohio, you've got Ragland, you've got Kenny Young the back, you've got James Gardner the wide receiver. We know what we're going to get there. But over at Marshall, what are we going to see? Is Alex Thompson healthy? Is he going to be back? We don't know. Is it Isaiah Green, who was really having a good preseason camp? What we do know is that Marshall has some great targets, right? They got Tara Brady, they got Marcel Williams, who's the Willie Johnson. I mean, there are no shortage at receivers at Marshall. The one guy that I really think is ready for a breakout season is Tyler King, the running back. I think he's a sophomore this year. He's the one guy that I'm really looking for to have an explosion this year. That Marshall offense is going to be up tempo. I'm really looking for a big year from Tyler King. I think he's a sleeper running back in FBS leagues. Central Michigan playing at Kentucky. I mean, look, I don't think there's anything to know, but with Kentucky, that we're going to get a heavy dose of Benny Snell as long as he's healthy. I'm really interested to see how Lynn Bowden produces in that offense, or if he's utilized more this year. I'm monitoring him. And over at Central Michigan, we know what we're getting with Jonathan Ward. He caught 48 passes out the backfield last year, so if he doesn't do it in the run game, he could probably give you some points in the passing game. So if you're in a PPR format, I think you're okay starting him this week. But what's going to go on? Who's going to be the new wide receiver 1 for the Chippewas? We don't know that. We'll have to monitor that this weekend as well. Tough situation for Northern Illinois this week, traveling to Iowa, but then again, you can flip that and say, man, what a sneaky opponent for Iowa to play in the season opener. We know that we've got we know what we're getting at quarterback with Marcus Childers at NIU, but Marcus Jones seems to be listed 1, Trey Harbison 2. I think those are guys that are going to be splitting carries moving forward as they get into MAC play. And over at Iowa, the running back situation, Ivory Kelly Martin, Turin Young. We were high on Turin Young. It looks like it's Kelly Martin that's top in the depth chart. He's probably going to get the early carries, but I'm curious to see how that plays out. Is Turin Young going to be that short yardage, goal line, end zone guy? I think that's going to be how it plays out, but we won't know until we see it. But that's my prediction for the upcoming year. So I think if you have shares, if you have both guys right now, it's really a hold and wait situation until we get a couple of game weeks down the line. Let's take a look at Washington State, Wyoming, and I'm going to save Washington State for last. Wyoming we saw last week play. Kellen Overstreet has now moved on. We had predicted Kellen Overstreet to be the leading running back this year. He got hurt in fall camp, didn't practice much. He is now retired. Nico Evans just absolutely blew away the doors in week 1. He's going to be the running back in week 2. He's going to be a start in week 2 against Washington State. I think you've got to start him at home. And then what's going on with the quarterback situation at Washington State? Personally, myself, I don't even know if Mike Leach knows who he's starting right now. I think he may know in the next day or so, or if he gets out on the field while he's eating his banana, he may have some type of, he may have some type of revelation. But here's what I'm going to say about the Washington State quarterback situation. Personally, myself, I think Gardner Minshew is going to be the starter. But here's my concern. Mike Leach has had, he's had a tendency to have a quick hook at times with his quarterbacks. And I'll tell you this, I do not think a road trip in the first week of the game to Wyoming is the easiest matchup for Washington State this week. So whoever is the starting quarterback really has a lot of pressure on their shoulders to come out and produce. It may almost be better, considering that they're playing Wyoming, who has a good defense, to be the second guy this week, because if the first guy struggles, you're definitely going in. So I don't know. We'll see how that plays out. I mean, I wouldn't even rule out the possibility of seeing Minshew, Tinsley, and Gordon all play this weekend, but you never know with Mike Leach. So we're going to see how that plays out. Going on to UNLV. First USC, and I'll tell you what I'm looking for. Let's see how the freshman JT Daniels performs, right? All the rave reviews and camps. The one thing that I can tell you is there's no short of weapons, right? Tyler Vaughns, Jones. You've got the freshman coming in, Ross St. Brown. No shortage of weapons. The only thing that we did do is we did bring back Stephen Carr a little bit to the pack. We had him really high in the rankings. All of a sudden, he's listed as a co-starter. Maybe we're overreacting to the first week depth chart, but Stephen Carr coming off that back surgery off season, we hear he's fully healthy. Maybe they're just limiting his touches in the first few weeks. I don't necessarily think USC is going to need to ride Stephen Carr early. So maybe we overvalue him in the beginning of the season. Maybe it's going to take 2 or 3 weeks before he really ramps up and gets going and takes over that lead spot and really gets a lot of the touches out of the Trojan backfield. North Carolina traveling cross country to play at Cal. I think know what we're getting with Cal with Patrick Laird, Noah, and Wharton at wide receiver. I feel confident in knowing what we're going to get from the Cal offense. What I'm really curious to see, how is the running back situation at North Carolina play out? Is it going to be Carter? Is it going to be Brown? Is it going to be Antonio Williams? And you know what? I don't know who it's going to be. It's going to probably take another his situation where it's going to take 2 or 3 games before it plays out. So, you know what? Let's not get ahead of ourselves. These are guys we probably need to put on the watch list, guys that probably aren't drafted unless you're playing in a very conference-specific league. But that North Carolina running back situation is going to have to be evaluated on a week-to-week basis. UT Martin playing at Missouri. Here's the one thing that I'll say about Missouri. I actually think when I look around in the fantasy circles, I actually think Drew Lock is overvalued this year. I do not see Drew, and that's just my personal opinion, I do not see Drew Lock performing from a fantasy standpoint as last year. I think Heupel's offense made a huge difference, okay? Here's what I think. I think Missouri's going to lean on that running game a lot more. Now, there's a lot of questions. Crockett versus Roundtree. I personally like Roundtree. We have Crockett ranked a little higher. I think Crockett's going to get the first crack, but I am not going to be surprised if Larry Roundtree leads Missouri in rushing at the end of the year. I'm a little nervous about going one way or the other on the running back situation. I almost feel it's going to be a 50-50 split. The only way you're coming out ahead is if somebody gets hurt. I don't wish for injuries, but if somebody gets hurt, the other guy is going to be a fantasy stud. So we'll definitely have to monitor that moving forward. Eastern Illinois playing at Arkansas. We know now that Cole Kelly is the starting quarterback. I think you're looking at Cornelius and Nance as the big targets, and Dev Whaley now being named the starting running back. So we finally got some clarity at the Arkansas Arkansas offense through their depth chart released just a day ago. So that's my take on Arkansas there. We've got Boise State traveling to play at Troy, which was a great game last year at Boise State. I think for me, what I'm looking for from Boise State is Octavius Evans. I don't know how I know he was dinged up a little bit in fall camp. I actually think Octavius Evans is Boise State's best wide receiver. There's a lot of people that are on the bandwagon of A.J. Richardson. There's some that like Modster. I actually think the talent of Evans is going to win out, and eventually he will be their wide receiver 1. And over at Troy, I think when you look at that Troy offense, you need to say, who's the running back? And now listed on the depth chart that just came out, we thought it would be Jamarius Henderson, but it's actually B.J. Smith. B.J. Smith tops the running back depth chart at Troy, so we need to monitor that situation as well. But B.J. Smith is the name to grab over at Troy, or at least add him onto your watch list moving forward. We've got Old Dominion playing at Liberty. This should be a fun game from a fantasy perspective. Obviously, we've got Antonio Gandy Golden, who I was really high on in the preseason. It'd be nice to see him play. But over at Old Dominion, another player that took a step back in the rankings this week, Jeremy Cox. Why did he take a step back in the rankings? Well, he was listed as a co-starter with Keyshawn Strong when the depth chart came out. I don't know how it's going to play out. I don't know if there's any significance, but I hit the pause button a little bit on Jeremy Cox being a top 10, top 15 running back when I saw the number 1 up there. So I think Cox is definitely worth a start this week, but I don't know if he's going to be a top 10 running back if he's going to be sharing a few more carries than I anticipated leading up to week 1. Fordham playing at Charlotte. I think Benny LeMay is just a name to monitor, running back for Charlotte in that matchup. You've got North Carolina A&T playing at East Carolina. Obviously, we know what's going on at East Carolina. You got Reed Herring, the quarterback. We're expecting big things from Trevon Brown this year. I think the question is who emerges as that wide receiver 2 at East Carolina? My guess, DeAndre Ferrier. But let's monitor the wide receiver situation at East Carolina. They're going to throw the ball a ton. Someone is going to be number 2 behind Trevon Brown. You've got Elon traveling to play at South Florida. Real interesting South Florida offense now that Quentin Flowers is no longer there. Blake Barnett is going to be the starter, and I think Blake Barnett is an under-radar fantasy play in that offense. I think you're also looking at Elijah Mack. I think he could be a very productive fantasy running back this year. And that receiver, you probably got Tyree McCants as their number one receiver. I think there's some people sleeping on this South Florida offense this year. Those are definitely some names that I will be monitoring moving forward that you should have on your watch list. And we're going to go into my final sheet, guys. I think we're doing okay on time. We're probably on pace to do it right at about 60 minutes, which is faster than I thought that we would. So thanks for hanging in there. But remember, let me go ahead and throw this question out as well. I will be taking all of your questions on Twitter. I will be going on Twitter for the next 30, 45 minutes after the show is over here. After I turn off this show, I'll post the start bench on the website, and I'll go over to Twitter, answer questions for 30, 40 minutes, however long it takes to get them out. So hold off on some of those questions to the end. If I don't catch them on Twitter and I catch them on here, maybe I'll try to get them, answer your questions on Twitter, somehow get them loaded up on the site if I don't get you in the chat room here. I'm going to try to catch the chat room before I go over to Twitter. Richmond playing at Virginia. I don't know if there's anything to go on farther with Virginia other than the fact that I love Bryce Perkins and I love Olamide Zaccheaus. I've been on these two guys all year. I've got them on my teams. I tried to get them on as many teams as possible. I love both of those guys. Delaware State playing at Buffalo. Obviously, we're watching Tyree Jackson and Anthony Johnson. Can they get out of the gate really fast this year? Anthony Johnson, one of the top receivers in college fantasy football this year. If you've got him, you're expecting a fast start as a fantasy owner. South Carolina State playing at Georgia Southern. I think here we're just looking at Shai Werts, the quarterback, and Wesley Fields, the running back. We're just going to see how they do right out of the gate, and that's all we're looking at Georgia Southern. Grambling playing at Louisiana. I have to tell you, I was really high on Levi Lewis, the quarterback of Louisiana, leading all up to the preseason. They had a transfer out, but he was a guy that was listed as a co-starter on the depth chart with who was it, Luis Nunez. So he took a step back in the rankings as well, but I think Levi Lewis wins out in the end, and I think that could be a dangerous offense, especially with Raheem Malone at the receiver. I think that's a name you need to add onto your watch list. And Trey Regis, who probably was drafted in a lot of full FBF drafts. VMI traveling on the road to play at Toledo. We know what we're getting with Toledo. We've got Shaquille Seymour at running back. We've got Cody Thompson at receiver. We've got Deontay Johnson at receiver. I mean, Toledo's just stacked with skill position guys. But who's going to be the quarterback? And I think we're going to be seeing split snaps this week. That's definitely a position we're going to monitor this weekend, that quarterback situation at Toledo as they host VMI. Southeast Missouri State playing at Arkansas State. There's nothing to not like about Justin Hansen this year. Most of his weapons come back. As a matter of fact, I'll even say his weapons will be better this year. Not only does Justin McInnes come back, Omar Bayless. We've also got Kurt Merritt, the transfer. You've also got Dehu Green, the transfer from Oklahoma. I'm telling you right now, Justice Hansen could be better this year than he was a year ago. Let's just hope that he stays healthy. Mercer playing at Memphis. I think what we're looking for here is who takes Anthony Miller's spot as the top receiver. We know that Brady White is the quarterback now that David Moore transferred out. Is it Coxie? We don't know. I happen to think Tony Pollard is going to get used more as a receiver out of the backfield. You've still got Henderson there. You've still got Patrick Taylor there. No shortage of weapons in the Memphis offense, but we will be monitoring that wide receiver one spot for Memphis this week, opening weekend. Central Arkansas playing at Tulsa. I think Shamari Brooks has gone under the radar in this preseason. I don't know about you guys, but I just feel like Brooks is not getting as much notoriety in the fantasy circles this year as Tulsa running backs have had in recent past. But I actually think that Shamari Brooks is undervalued moving into the season. I'm not saying that he's not drafted. I'm not saying he's going to be out there on your free agent waiver wire. But I do think that he's been a little undervalued and probably went a little later in drafts this year than I believe D'Angelo Brewer went just a season ago. Now, let's look at Louisiana Tech playing at South Alabama. Really interested to monitor the progress of Jamar Smith. Last year, he was really inconsistent. I'll be curious to see how he gets going out of the gate and connecting and the chemistry with wide receiver Teddy Veal. And at running back, remember Louisiana Tech lost 2 running backs. You're looking at Jaquan Dancy or Tucker Israel splitting carries for Louisiana Tech. We have to monitor that situation. We don't know which guy is going to be the top guy in that offense. Jackson State playing at Southern Mississippi. Okay, Jackson State playing Southern Mississippi. You've got Jack Abraham, the quarterback now. We've got to replace Ito Smith at running back. I think Tez Parks has been an under-the-radar pick. Tez Parks didn't even get picked in my in-house league. I think Tez Parks is a guy, if you're struggling at running back, full FBS league, if he's out there, take a shot at him. He's running back 1 over at Southern Miss. We know what Ito Smith did in that offense. If they're going to utilize him any similar that they utilized Ito Smith, that could be a guy out there right now before he hits the waiver wire that you pick up before week 1. And is Quez Watkins the wide receiver 1 at Southern Miss? Let's see who takes over that wide receiver 1 spot for the Golden Eagles. Cincinnati traveling to play at UCLA. 2 things we're watching in this game. Nothing really on the Cincinnati side, but it's all UCLA. It's the quarterback and it's the running back. All preseason long, we have been touting Bolu. And when the depth chart came out, it was Joshua Kelly. Now, a part of me believes that this is a little overreaction to the depth chart because Bolu was a little dinged up throughout fall camp. I think eventually he takes over, but let's just throw this out there. Joshua Kelly gets to start. We know that Chip Kelly's offense can produce some big plays on the ground. Say Kelly goes for a 60, 65-yarder on the opening drive of the game. All of a sudden now the dynamics of that offense and what we thought about the running backs change. Maybe Kelly gets a little bit more run and is a legitimate threat to keep that running back 1 spot than what we thought. I actually have both of the guys in my league. I dropped Jamabu once when he was suspended for 2 games. And here's another thing in regards to the quarterback position. Dorian Thompson-Robinson. The longer the quarterback starter remains unannounced, the more I think it's going to be the freshman. I don't know. We'll see. Personally, I think he's going to end up getting snaps in this game, but I feel that the longer a decision takes to get made, the more it favors that the freshman is going to get the call. So let's see if my intuition is right on that. So if you want to stash Thompson Robinson, go ahead and do that. Maybe he's worth a stash on your roster. Indiana playing at Florida International. We know that Brandon Dawkins transferred out. We know that Patrick Ramsey is now the starting quarterback. Cole Jest is the running back who could be an under-the-radar play for week 1, especially for a lot of you guys playing in DFS. And then at the receiver spot, Nick Westbrook, Walt Fillier, those are the 2 guys that I'm looking at this year. I think they could actually be pretty decent fantasy receivers for you playing in the Big Ten. Nichols playing at Kansas. Look, Kansas guys have only won 3 games over the last 3 seasons. They have a chance to do that. They played 3 cupcakes in the first 3 games of the year. I actually think that Steve Sims could start off really fast. If you have Steve Sims, now is the time to play him because the matchups aren't going to get any better. And over the first 3 weeks, Steve Sims is he's within reach of getting some school records. I can really see him starting fast. Don't be afraid to put Steve Sims in your lineup this week right out of the gate. South Dakota playing at Kansas State. The only question we have there is who's going to be the quarterback. My gut tells me it's Alex Delton. We could see both guys. My guess is we'll likely see both guys, but I'm thinking Delton is going to open up as the starter for Kansas State. We've got Michigan playing at Notre Dame. Running back situation. Higdon, Evans, split carries. We don't know. What's more curious is what's going to go on at receiver. We know it looks like they lost Tariq Black, who may have gotten injured. I don't think they're going to have him for the game. I think that's going to make them a lot more one-dimensional as they were last year, even with Shea Patterson at quarterback. But over on the Notre Dame side, I threw a couple of names at some email, you guys on the email. I threw out tight end Cole Kmet, and I threw out Jafar Armstrong. It looks like the rumors of Dexter Williams being suspended for the first 3 or 4 games looks like that was true. And I think Jafar Armstrong is the guy that I've been giving out now for a couple of weeks as a sleeper in that Notre Dame offense. So supposedly the coaches, he reminds the coaches of another former Notre Dame player, Theo Reddick, and if that's the case, that's really high praise for the youngster. So if you don't have Jafar Armstrong on your watch list, you need to add him now. If not, you go out and grab him and take a shot and hold it on to him right now. Stephen F. Austin playing at Mississippi State. Of course, we've got the news that Nick Fitzgerald is suspended for that game. They won't need Nick Fitzgerald. For me, the more interesting situation is we have been thinking all along that Aris Williams was going to be the running back one, and now all of a sudden Kylan Hill comes in, and it looks like, and guys, look, I'm down here in the Gulf South. There is a lot of talk about Kylan Hill right now. There's a lot of excitement about him. It would not surprise me to see Hill end up being the Bulldogs' #1 rusher this year, but I think we're going to be more of a split early on in the season. That's a situation that's definitely worth monitoring moving forward. Charleston Southern playing at Florida. Interesting to see how Van Jefferson is incorporated into the offense, the Ole Miss transfer. Malik Davis is down there third on the depth chart behind Scarlett, behind P. Ryan. I actually think Malik Davis is their best running back. He's still getting back from the knee surgery. Supposedly he's okay. Maybe they're easing him back. I think somewhere eventually down the line, if Malik Davis is not drafted, put him on your watch list. I eventually think he's going to take over that starting running back spot again over at Florida. Middle Tennessee playing at Vanderbilt. You know, the one thing I'm looking for here is the running back clarity over at Vanderbilt. There is none. I mean, there's a three-headed monster listed on the depth chart. And over at Middle Tennessee State, you know, obviously we have Ty Lee, but who's going to emerge as that second receiver? Is it Brad Anderson out of the H spot? Is it going to be Wyndham? Is it going to be Patrick Smith? We just don't know. Ty Lee can't hold down the wide receiver spot by himself. Who's going to be the other guy that emerges as a wide receiver too for Brent Stockstill? SMU playing North Texas, maybe the most exciting fantasy matchup of the weekend right out of the gate. Great matchup. You've got Ben Hicks going against Mason Fine. I think the only thing for me, and the questions for me, there's two. Is Nick Smith going to be the guy? He was listed as a co-starter on the depth chart. Is he going to be taking over the spot that Jeffrey Wilson had last year and get most of the touches in that North Texas offense? And what's going on with receiver at SMU? There's going to be a lot of balls to go around. Is James Proche really going to perform? He did not get rave reviews coming out of spring. I haven't really seen too much in the fall. I have to think right now he's the guy that I would value more than anyone. You also have Reggie Roberson, who transferred from West Virginia. I think he's an interesting player as well. Those two guys right now, if I had to take two SMU receivers, those are the two that I'm taking. But I'm telling you right now, this could be a situation worth monitoring. There could be a guy that comes out of nowhere that we weren't expecting in that SMU offense. Northern Arizona playing at UTEP. I'm going to take a pass. I'll punt on that game. Louisville playing at Alabama. I think Tua is your quarterback. I think it's just a smokescreen. I think that Jalen Hurts plays. He gets snaps. I think he's going to get a little bit of playing time, but I think that Tua is your guy. I think when you look at the Louisville side, the only thing that you want to see is promise out of Juwan Pass. We're very high on Juwan Pass this year. The only thing that you want to come away with out of this matchup is, did Juwan Pass look good? Did he pass the eye test? And if so, I think you've got a fantasy stud throughout the end of the year. Let's be honest. He's playing Alabama. There are not too many guys in the country that are going to perform well against Alabama, and there's not too many guys in the country that you're going to start on a weekly basis in fantasy against Alabama. Bowling Green playing on the road at Oregon. We're going to look to see Tony Brooks-James. Look, the depth chart, the backup running back listed was situational. First time I've ever seen that on the depth chart. Makes me think there's going to be 2 or 3 guys behind Tony Brooks-James used in that lineup. It'll be interesting to see how heavy of a workload Brooks-James gets. So we'll have to monitor that moving forward. Akron playing at Nebraska. Okay, Scott Frost's first game in Nebraska. We know that Adrian Martinez is going to be the quarterback after Gebbia transferred out. The job is all his. I don't know who takes another snap for Nebraska. I think if you're a fantasy owner now, you have to like Adrian Martinez because there's not much behind him. It's sink or swim in that Scott Frost offense with Adrian Martinez now. Just monitor the running back situation. You've got Greg Bell. Positive signs coming out about Exubo. You've got Marcus Washington. So you've got plenty of options over there at Nebraska. Let's monitor that situation as well. You've got Abilene Christian playing at Baylor. And I'll tell you right now, I've answered about 5 emails already this week about Jermichael Hasty being benched for the first half of the game. He's benched for the first half of Baylor's Big 12 game. First Big 12 game. He's not benched for the first half of this week's game. So keep that in mind when you're making your lineups. South Dakota State playing at Iowa State. We know what we're getting with David Montgomery. What I'm interested to see is the performance of Hakeem Butler. And I have to tell you, Hakeem Butler, I am not, from a fantasy perspective, I have not been as high on Hakeem Butler as a lot of other coaches have been. I'm really curious to see where Hakeem Butler falls out in the fantasy world, because I saw him ranked as high as like a top 10 receiver. I just don't see it. Maybe I'm wrong, but we'll see how that plays out. I just think that that offense is built around the running game, and particularly Montgomery. So we'll see how that plays out. Incarnate Word play in New Mexico. I think Tyrone Owens is an interesting play in that offense. The former offensive coordinator for Arizona is now the offensive coordinator for New Mexico. So you won't see them running the triple option all game long. You're going to see some spread elements in there. And I think Tyrone Owens could be an under the radar play this year as long as he stays in that lineup. You've got Idaho playing at Fresno State. Let's see if Keyshawn Johnson starts fast. You've got UTSA playing at Arizona State. I think from there, what I'm looking for is two things. Is Eno Benjamin going to be the running back one that we thought he was going to be? And is N'Keal Harry really going to assert himself as a legitimate top 10 fantasy receiver? The potential is there. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know what we're going to get out of that offense yet. So ranking him as a top 10 preseason fantasy receiver, I'm going a little bit off of blind faith and a little bit off of potential on that one. I'm really hoping that Manny Wilkins has a big year this year and leans on N'Keal Harry. Let's look at BYU playing at Arizona. And guys, there's only just a couple of more games to go. I think for me, what I'm looking for is let's see the difference in systems with Khalil Tate under Mazzoni versus under Rodriguez. I think you're going to be okay. For me, what I'm looking for is the receiver position. Sean Poindexter, Shun Brown. Keep an eye on Stanley Berryhill. Something about Berryhill. I like him. He's shifty in space. If they can get him the ball, he could be a nice option in deep FBS leagues, even deep Power 5 leagues. And then we go to the next game down, Navy at Hawaii. Hawaii played last week. We know McDonald, Ursua, and Bird are the top three guys to have in that run-shoot offense. When you look at Navy, obviously you like Malcolm Brown, but the question is, how does Zach Abey fit into the offense? Listed as the top wide receiver, does Abey take some snaps on the center to take some fantasy value away from Malcolm Brown in maybe some short yardage, maybe some goal line situations? I still think Malcolm Perry is going to be one of the better fantasy quarterbacks this year. But if AB steals a few points from him every week, now all of a sudden, instead of becoming a top 10 quarterback, he's down in the top 20 level. So let's monitor that, see if that plays out. The Sunday night matchup, Miami at LSU. With Miami, we're going to be monitoring the quarterback situation. I mean, look, Miami is favored, but this is not going to be an easy matchup for Malik Rozier. Does this open a door for N'Kosi Perry? I don't know. Let's keep an eye on the tight end, the freshman Brevin Jordan. He should get early playing time over at LSU, where obviously you've got Joe Burrow, who's now starting the Ohio State transfer. You've got Clyde Edwards-Helaire starting, Nick Brossette, the number 2, or their co-starters. It's interesting to see how that situation will play out, and really if LSU's offense can get going. Because if they can't get going, all of a sudden now it opens up the door for some of the freshmen, like Curry, the freshman running back, Provins, the freshman running back. And the one guy that I'll tell you to keep an eye on, add this name onto your watch list. I think he's going to be special. Jamar Chase, wide receiver LSU, true freshman. He's listed as a co-starter already as a true freshman. I think he's going to be a playmaker in that offense this year for LSU. And then Virginia Tech at Florida State on Labor Day evening to wind down the week. What am I looking for from Virginia Tech? I'm looking at the wide receiver Hazleton. I'm curious to see how they move him around the offense. I'm curious to see how Francois operates the offense now that he's been named the starter. I'm interested to see how heavy of a workload Cam Akers can handle. And then also at the wide receiver spot, I believe you're looking at Naquan Murray as the top wideout. You've also got to wonder how much play does Matthews get? How much does Tamorrion Terry figure into that offense? So that'll I think we're going to see a run-heavy offense more for Florida State this year. Just curious to see how much of that falls on the shoulders of Cam Akers. So that's it, guys. I've gone over every game. This is unlike anything that I've ever done, but I wanted to take the time to do it to let you know what I'm going to be looking at on the first weekend, what you should be looking at on the first weekend, what I will be assessing over the weekend as I'm watching these games. So when I send out my email on Sunday, on Monday, those will be a lot of the talking points, and hopefully a lot of that will get clarity on a lot of that information. So With that being said, I'm about to log off on here. I'm going to start off the start bench on the website, but I'm going to see if I can go ahead and address some of these real quick, guys. And it looks like I can only scroll so far, so let's see what I have. Personally, I'd go Sills and Brown for sure. Sorry, pick 3. Thanks to everyone. Let's see what we got here, guys. Just bear with me. I'll see if I can get a question. Will Holyfield get enough touches at UGA to garner a roster spot in a Power 5 league? And somebody says he lives in Atlanta. Nobody's talking about Holyfield. So I think he's going to get touches to start off with, especially with White going down, but we'll see. Yeah, staying hydrated is a problem. Quarterback will agree. Which 3 wide receivers? Butler, T. Higgins, Theo Howard, Chris Platt, and Jalen Hurd. Jalen Hurd's another interesting over at Baylor. Curious to see how he gets incorporated in that offense. Obviously, they've got Mims in there as well. But if you're going 3 receivers, Butler, Higgins, and I would probably go Platt this week. And I don't know about Theo Howard right now, and I don't know about Jalen Hurd. Let's see. You don't have a Twitter. Let's see if I can get you on here. Let's see. Just sent a trade offer. I think it'll get accepted. I sent Kennedy McCoy, Darius Anderson, and Cedric Bird. I get Devin Butler, Dedrick Nelson, and Alexander Madison. Good trade. Yeah. Well, I think you're robbing him. You need to give him some money in return. Let's see. PPR running back pick 2: Kelly Martin, Kylan Hill, Greg Bell, Darren Hall, and Josh Kelly. I have to go with Kelly Martin just for the offense. I think Kylan Hill is going to get run. Greg Bell's going to get run. Darren Hill. I think you've got a lot of running backs right there that kind of fall in the same tier. I'd probably feel more confident going with Kelly Martin and probably Kylan Hill until I see how Greg Bell and that Nebraska running back situation gets played out. I think if you want to take a stab, Josh Kelly is definitely going to get carries in that UCLA offense in the first game. I wouldn't be afraid to roll the dice with him. Better bench wide receiver depth: Hazleton, Virginia Tech, or Tavion Jacobs, Maryland. I like Jacobs from Maryland too. I just think Hazleton, the passing game is going to go through him at Virginia Tech. So there's my answer. So guys, listen, thanks for joining in. I know a few of you all have already hopped off. It's been a long show. I'm going to wrap this up. I'm going to get that start bench on the website. Hop over to Twitter. If you guys are over there, shoot anything you want to. Even if want to know how to dress your ham and cheese sandwich, I'll address it on there. But I'm going to head on over, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We're going to do these shows every week, and I'll see you guys next week.